Middle Schoolers. I'm Mr. Linderwell, and today I'll be talking about heart rate a little bit and just kind of how to find it, what your heart rate means, and just go from there. So to begin, your heart rate is, or pulse, is the number of times your heart beats in a minute. And your resting heart rate, it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's basically when your heart's at rest, it's not going to be working as hard, so it's going to be a little bit of a lower number. And the maximum heart rate is the max amount of times your heart beats in a minute. So when you're exercising super hard, it's going to be at its highest peak. So you're probably wondering, where do you find your heart rate? So it's a good question. To start, you either can find it on your wrist or on the side of your neck, are the two most common spots. And so you can count the beats per minute. You can count to 60, and that's your number. You can count to 30 and then multiply that number by 2, or you can count to 15 and multiply that number by 4. So what should my heart rate be? It's kind of a tricky question because as middle schoolers, they're all developing and changing differently. But your resting heart rate should normally be between 60 beats per minute and 100 beats per minute. And your resting heart rate, the lower it is, the better. And it can change if you're in a bunch of sports or a lot of activities. So we're going to talk about heart rate zones a little bit. So this is kind of what your heart rate monitors go off of. So the zone 1 is the very low. It's the bottom. It's 50 to 60% of your heart rate max. Zone 2 is still low. It's 60 to 70% of your heart rate max. And zone 3 is kind of in the middle, and that's where most PE classes try to have you in that certain range. Zone 4 is 80 to 90% of your heart rate max, and that's the high zone, and then zone 5 is the max, so it's the max intensity. So we're gonna move into heart rate monitors in PE. Some of you probably have used heart rate monitors in PE before, some of you might not have. So the use of heart rate monitors they not only provide you with information about your heart rate, it's also used as a motivating tool to hit your goals. It's also an unbiased way for grading as well, so it's fair for the both of us. All right, so we're gonna do a little closing activity here. So we're gonna be doing some activities throughout the year, and I just want you to think if your heart rate would increase a lot doing these activities or not. So number 1, just say yes or no. Number 1 is yoga. Number 2, kickball. Number 3, soccer. 4, walking. 5, frisbee golf. And 6, volleyball. All right, thank you.
Hello class, my name is Mr. Welsh and I'm going to be accompanied by Mr. Linderwall. He is going to be demonstrating the exercises that all of us together are going to be doing. So what you want to do is make sure you have all room. So what I usually do is spread out your arms and then do like a 360. If you don't touch anything, you're all good. You have enough space. So before class and before we start this exercises, we want to make sure we have a gym attire. So hoodie, sweatpants, and some gym shoes. That is a good gym attire. So before we start, make sure you have a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, because we are going to be recording our resting heart rate, which we learned from the previous lesson of Mr. Linderwall, and your heart rate after each exercise. So the 6 exercises that we are going to do are jumping jacks, plank, push-ups, burpees, wall sits, and then to end it all off, jogging in place. Now, I understand that not everyone is able to do all these, so there are some modifications to it. So if Dylan wants to start out with the push-ups, if you cannot do a full push-up, he can go from the knees. Okay, just like that. Now plank is the same deal, but he's going to be holding it just like that. But if he can't do that, he'd go down to his knees as well. Okay, so, and then when he gets up for the burpees, so if you can't do a burpee, all you're gonna do is squat and then jump as high as you can, reaching for the sky. Squat and then jump down instead of the full burpee motion. So In between each exercise, it's going to be 30 exercises, 30 seconds each exercise, and 1 minute rest. Within that 1 minute rest, we are going to be holding your heart rate, and that's when you're going to write it down on that piece of paper, and then we'll move on to the next exercise. Is everyone ready? So, first exercise, jumping jacks, and I will get my timer ready, and then everyone ready at home? So 30 seconds starting now. Yes, there you go. Keep 'em moving, keep 'em moving. You got this. 15 more seconds, 15 more seconds. 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, stop. Go to your neck or your wrist to calculate your pulse, and we are gonna count that for 30 seconds starting now. Time is up. Now, whatever number you got, you're gonna write it down on that piece of paper before we move on to the next exercise. We have another 30 seconds of rest, so get your breath, relax, calm down, before we move on to the next exercise, which is push-ups. Give you some time to write down your number that you got from the first exercise before we move on to the next one. So, Mr. Linderwall, if you want to get ready for push-ups, we are going to start that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 30 seconds. No means this is a competition. You're just doing the best you can. That's all I ask. And as I said before, if you can't do the full push-ups, the full 30 seconds, you can modify it in going to your knees. You got it? 5 more seconds. 5 more seconds. Stop. Same thing as before. You're going to collect your heart rate, whether it's up by the neck or by your wrist, like Mr. Linderwall is showing. And we're going to start counting now. Stop, write whatever number you got on that count and put it on that piece of paper underneath the first exercise that you did the exact same thing. And I'll give you a little break as before, let you catch your heart rate, just calm down a little bit, get your breathing under control. And the third exercise we're going to do is plank, I do believe. It is plank. So Mr. Linderwall will get set for plank, and we have another 15 seconds before we start this exercise. You guys are doing great. Keep up the hard work. We are going to start in 3, 2, 1. 30 seconds. Just hold that plank. Hold that plank. And I said before with the push-ups, you can also do that with the plank. If you can't hold that for full 30 seconds, you can go down to the knees to make it easier for you while still pushing you to be the best you can. You got another 8 seconds. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. 3, 2, 1, time. Same thing as before, as the last ones, you want to collect your heart rate on the neck or the wrist, as before. And we're gonna start counting now. Take that number that you just got and put it on that piece of paper underneath the second exercise that you just got done doing. Now, give you a little break as well to catch your breath, just like last time, because this time it is going to be burpees. So, if you want to do a burpee for us, just to show, just like that. Or you can do that modified version of just the squat and jump as high as you can, whatever feels most comfortable to you.
Push up with the burpee.
What?
You want to push up with the burpee.
Whatever you feel comfortable with. So, we're going to be starting in 3, 2, 1, go. There you go. There you go. Keep pushing yourselves, guys. Keep pushing. Keep pushing. Keep pushing. 5 more seconds. Keep pushing. 2, 1, stop. Now, same thing as always. Go to your neck or your wrist to collect your pulse. And we are going to start counting now. Time. Use that number that you just got on the pulse and write it down underneath the third exercise that we did, which was plank. Now, moving on to wall sits. So you want to make sure you have a clear enough space and then get a wall right here. Now, you're going to sit down, knees and legs at 90 degrees, and you're going to hold it. And if you need help, at first you can challenge yourself by holding your hands out like this, but if you need a little assistance, you can put your hands on your legs like Mr. Linderwall is showing. We're going to start this exercise in 3, 2, 1, start. Five more seconds, 5 more seconds. Time, good job. Now, same thing as before, collect your heart rate either at the neck or your wrist like Mr. Linderwall is showing. Good job. We got one more exercise after this. Starting now. Time. Good job. Whatever that number is, write that down underneath the previous exercise that we did. Now, the final exercise that we are going to do is just simply jog in place. You can go at whatever tempo you like, whatever you feel comfortable with. All it is going to be a jog in place. All right? Give it a little time to relax. going to start this exercise in 3, 2, 1, go. Simple jog in place. Go at whatever tempo you feel like. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Go. 5 more seconds, 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Good job. Grab your pulse. Good. Write that number of pulse you got down, and that will conclude our exercise. Good job. Good job. So, thank you, Mr. Linderwell, for doing that. And now, you can get your breath and everything like that, recover, because after this, you should have gotten an email from me residing a Google form. And that is where you are going to write down your exercises and the heart rates you got at each one. That's where that information is going to come into play. So after you get a little break and everything like that, we are going to move over to Mr. Butson's and Mr. Newman's classroom, and they were going to use that information that we got from the exercises that we just did. Just want to say thank you and great job today, guys.
All right, welcome back. Hope you guys all enjoyed doing your exercises. So now we're going to transition into graphing. So we did all those exercises, we got all of our numbers, and now we're actually going to see what those numbers do. So the reason why in science and math we graph is to see how our data looks in an organized and clear way. We want to present our data in a way where we can read it, others can read it, and also where we can kind of see what's going on with the numbers. So basically this is how a graph looks. How it's going to start is we are going to need to see what is on the y-axis and what's on the x-axis. So the x-axis is all about our independent variables. So what that is are the variables that are just, they're set in stone. They don't depend on anything. And what that is for us is our activities. Those are the things we want to see. Those are the ones that we're doing to see how much our heart rate is. So our y-axis is our dependent variable, and that's why it's our heart rate. So our heart rate depends on what exercise we're doing. So right now I've got all my activities listed on the bottom on the x-axis, so you want to leave a little bit of a space. What we're going to be making is a bar graph, so just keep some space in between each one. And on the y-axis we have our heart rate, and I have that going in scales of 25, from 25 up to 225. That's just for my own heart rate. That's because if you see my numbers, that is a range that fits all my numbers perfectly. So you might need to judge based on your numbers what that would be. However, going into that, so we have that all set up. A big part of graphing that we need to remember is making sure that we label things. It's a huge part of math. It's a huge part of science. So on the bottom, we need to label our x-axis with our activity. That's what I have written here, because this is saying what activities we were testing. On the y-axis, I have heart rate, in parentheses, beat per minute, and what that is it says that these are what the numbers mean, and people can just see them clearly. So I will give you a few minutes to draw your graph, get your data, your table set up, and meet back here and whenever you're done. So I assume at this point you have restarted the video, it's no longer paused, and your graph is all set up. So now that our graph is set up, we need to actually graph our points. So like I said, we're going to do a bar graph. So how it's going to look is we're going to start with each category going left to right. So our first category is resting. So what you're going to want to do is find your resting heart rate over here. Mine is 67 beats per minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find on the graph. I have resting right here. I'm going to try and find right about here in between this 50 and 75, somewhere between there, I'm going to draw my bar. So that's what my resting heart rate bar should look like. After that, we're going to move over, go to jumping jacks. This is 147. So as we can see, an exercise that requires a bit more, cardiovascular endurance versus just standing here resting obviously gets the heart rate going. So we're up to 147. So where that's going to look is we're going to go over here, find 147 roughly. Draw our bar. Now again, it doesn't need to be perfect, however we want to make sure it's organized, okay? So we want to make sure we can see all of our data clearly, so let's make sure that these lines stay as straight as possible. Keep that in mind. So we've got that. We're going over to push-ups now, so 102. Again, an exercise that gets the heart rate going compared to just standing here. However, it's not as much cardiovascular endurance as jumping jacks, so it's definitely going to go down a little bit. So in this case, it was 102 beats per minute for me. So that would be around here. And again, we all have unique numbers. Again, just make sure that you are graphing them where your numbers are, not where mine are. The plank, again, not an exercise that's very cardiovascularly straining. So 104. About the same, just slightly higher than push-ups. See that? And then I've got burpees coming in at 202. So this was definitely my highest one. Definitely the exercise that got my heart rate going the most. It incorporates a lot of different muscle groups. It's definitely cardiovascular, getting down, doing push-ups, so it's definitely upper body too. You have blood pumping in a lot of different areas of the body. So that's obviously going to be higher. So that was a 202. Wall sits, 109. So that definitely brought it back down a little bit. Not as high as the burpees. That'll be about right over here. And then jogging, 168. That brought me up, again, a bit more cardiovascularly straining. It's going to be about right there. There you go. We can clearly see right there, we have all of our bars set up. So this is how we kind of graphed our information. We can see how we took the numbers and the activities from our table and we transfer them over to a graph that we can accurately see all of our data. It can tell us, okay, visually, we have our resting heart rate is down here, definitely nowhere near as high as all the other exercises. We can definitely see how much higher burpees was compared to something like push-ups. It's a very good way just to see our data in a visual representation. So we're going to start moving on to the math aspect of this. And I know that we have an equation coming up, and we're going to see how that interplays with our graph.
All right, now we're going to go into our math portion. So what we're going to do is we are going to find our maximum heart rate, the minimum for our target zone, and then the maximum for our target zone. And these are the three equations that we will be using. The first one is 220 minus the age for our maximum heart rate. And then we have our maximum heart rate minus our resting heart rate. And then multiply that by 0.6 and then add on our resting heart rate. And that will be the minimum of our target zone. And then for the other one, for our max target zone, it'll be our max heart rate minus our resting times 0.8 and then add our resting. And that will be the target zone. That target zone is for like good exercise. We want to make sure that we're within that target zone. So for our numbers that we use, that we have up here, we used Mr. Newton's numbers. So for him, we have a 220 minus 22. So we will have a 198. And then we will plug that number into here and into here. So you would use the number that you got from that and plug it into our maximum heart rate. And then you will choose your number for resting heart rate and make sure that you have it in a beats per minute. So if you didn't multiply your 30-second number that you got for your 30-second time, make sure you multiply that by 2 to get a beats per minute. So for ours, we have 67 beats per minute for resting. So we'll put that in for all of our resting heart rates. And now we're going to work through the rest of our problems. So we have, first is 198 minus 67. So the first thing we do is we come over here, we've got a 1, and then we come down here, we got a 3, and then come down, we got a 131, and then we're going to multiply that by 0.6, which for us is a 78.6. You can take out your calculator if you need to. So then we are going to take that number and add on 67 to it. So we have 78.6 and add on 67 to that. So we start down here, 6, and then we've got 15, and then we've got 145.6, and that will be the minimum for our, the minimum of our target zone. And then for the bottom one, we will go with this same number, since it's the same as 198 minus 67 will be the same number as we did right here. So we'll just take that same number, our 131, and multiply it by 0.8. So if you need a calculator, you can do so. For us, it is a 104.8, and then we will add on our 67. And then we will have a 171.8 for our maximum for our target. So then what we're going to do is we're going to come over to our graph, and then we're going to see how our minimum and our maximum target zones fit in with our graph. So for our minimum target zone, it is a 145.6. So around 145.6, we're going to draw a line straight across, and then that we're going to label as our minimum. And then you guys can do the same. And then we're also going to plot our maximum for our target, which is 171.8. So it's going to be right about here. Bring that straight across. And that is our max. So for a good exercise, we're going to want to sit somewhere in between there. As you can see, resting is well below that. Some of those lower cardiovasculars are a little bit below that line, but then those ones like jumping jacks and jogging are in that. And then we can see that burpees for our numbers are over that target range. So just taking a look at those and seeing what types of exercises will get you into that target zone and will work best for you.